Good afternoon. Welcome to the weekly livestock market update. I'm Brownfield anchor reporter Megan Grebner. With us as always to talk all things markets, University of Missouri, Scott Brown. Good afternoon, Scott.
Good afternoon, Megan.
Happy Friday. Fall weather is definitely in store here in Kentucky. I know, I think you guys are moving into some cooler temperatures as well in your part of the world.
That's right. A lot of leaves falling off the trees. Fall is here.
Happy fall, y'all, right?
There you go.
All right, as we get things going today, let's recap and talk about what happened this week in the markets.
On the cattle side this week, cash cattle were basically unchanged for the week, so steady there. If we look at those feeder cattle markets, they were anywhere from steady to $8 lower this week. On the futures side, the December live cattle futures contract closed down nearly $4 this week, and that November feeder cattle futures contract was down about $1.15. On the beef side, choice box beef prices were down about $4.15 this week. We got pretty strong weakness happening on the loin side there and on the beef side. With hogs, cash hogs up about 70 cents this week. And the December lean hog futures contract closed up nearly $2.75. On the pork side, the pork cutout value also up about $2.75 this week on what were some stronger belly prices.
Everybody loves the bacon, right?
That's right.
All right, Scott, let's talk a little weekly slaughter as we take a look. Some improvements on the cattle side of things week over week, but we've seen a decline or a little bit of a slowdown on the hog side of things. Does that get us a little nervous knowing what time of year it is?
So I think it does. And again, I don't think we want to make too much out of one particular week, but we don't want that to become a trend that we have to deal with. And I think we all know we need to keep slaughter running just as strongly as we can. 654,000 head of cattle are on tap for this week. That's actually up 17,000 head from a week ago. So pretty good run this week on cattle. On hogs, 2.688 million head of hogs estimated to be slaughtered for the week. That's down about 1.5% from both the week ago as well as year ago levels. So a little bit slower week for hogs. And again, we say slower week, 2.688. I just want to remind us that's a pretty good run. But when we realize just the sheer number of hogs we have to deal with, we need to keep pushing probably north of 2.7 a week.
And definitely something we're keeping an eye on week to week. We know, though, that as we get into this final quarter of the year, this is when shackle space gets tight anyway. And we're still working through that backlog of hogs from those COVID-related shutdowns and slowdowns earlier this year.
Yeah, and really we have great hog prices, Megan, relative to what we would have thought maybe for this fourth quarter, given how tight it is. And I keep reminding folks that those are opportunities to give someone else some risk of lower prices as well. So it frankly is a good quarter thus far. On the hog side, much better from a price standpoint than I think anybody would have maybe thought at this point.
And if you look on the future side of things, I know we're talking specifically cash prices have been much better, but the futures, as you look out into 2021, those are some prices that definitely give producers some opportunity.
Absolutely. And I think if a lot of producers took advantage of those, I remind us that might be stronger hog supplies into 2021 as well as cash prices might fall by the time we get into 2021. But if a lot of folks have that bottom side risk protected, we could see a pretty good run of hogs in 2021.
All right. Really a fairly quiet week for us as it relates to reports. Retail prices is the first one we're going to talk about. And while above year ago levels, we're seeing still a little bit of a slide.
Yeah, absolutely. Across the board, if we started with beef, which is really the one that I think sticks out the most here, back in May, June, we were up nearly 23% relative to a year ago in that choice retail beef price. For September, the data came in only up 6.1% relative to a year ago. So we're continuing to see a reduction in the increase relative to year ago levels on the beef side. On pork, the pork retail price up 4.5% in September relative to a year ago. Chicken really leading the way, up 7.5%. So a little different spin on chicken, although lower because back in June we were up nearly 11% on that composite broiler price, and now sitting only up 7.5%.
Scott, as we talk about these higher retail prices, that doesn't necessarily translate into higher prices received by the farmer.
Yeah, and it's, I think, one of the issues that we see as we think a little bit longer term about COVID-19 and its effects. I'll take cattle and beef for this example. Choice beef retail price in September relative to January, February. So think about it relative to the 60 days prior to our COVID-19. Choice beef retail price up 5.3%. The box beef wholesale price up 5.7%. Yet cash cattle down 14.8% relative to where we started the year. It just reminds me there, and some will complain that producers have taken it with much lower prices, and maybe there's some truth to that. I'm going to stay away from that part of the conversation. However, I remind us there are added costs to COVID-19, whether it's processing, transporting, retailing, that I think has driven a wedge between what's happening at retail markets and what's happening at the farm. It's one I want to keep an eye on as we go forward. I think we've seen some contraction of that, widespread, but there's still a spread there left to deal with.
Consumer sentiment, as we look for the month of October, how does it sit?
Yeah, I think if you look at the overall index that's reported, it's again positive news. I up 1% is the preliminary numbers for October of this year. I do remind us that's still 15% below where we were a year ago at this time. So it's positive in the short run. Still have a ways to go. However, it's again an interesting difference between expectations. So two components in that overall consumer sentiment. Expectations up 4.2% month over month, yet the current economic conditions portion was down 3.3%. It just reminds me that more COVID cases, more concern here in the very near term is driving the current situation down, but there's still a pretty good expectation of continued income growth going forward that drives that expectations component higher. What we're realizing is the current situation index, which is down 3.3. What we hope is that expectations that grow longer term. Let's hope that we see current conditions climb up to those expectations as we move forward.
We definitely would like to see those start to inch their way back to that, 15% roughly difference from year ago levels.
Megan, I'll be so glad when we can get beyond all we've had to face in these livestock industries in 2020. I'm not sure how quickly it happens, but I'm ready for a lot more stability than we've had for much of 2020.
Absolutely. I have one other thing I'm going to throw at you here on this Friday afternoon. So there have been some reports, which I'm not necessarily too surprised, that Germany has been in talks with Asia to resume exports of pork into those regions, more of a regionalized basis. So like a blackout where they've had those cases of African swine fever pop in their wild boar population. How much are we watching how that develops, knowing that there's still cases trickling in and being reported, but overall to that big global pork supply and demand picture?
Yeah, I think it matters, especially from a U.S. perspective. I think some of the strength we've seen in hog prices is due to what is anticipated stronger exports as we finish the year. Stronger exports due in part to Germany being shut out of some of those markets. I'm not completely surprised to hear that discussion is ongoing. You talk about ASF in the wild population, not so much of a risk to take product from Germany if you're some of these Asian countries, as long as it stays there. And I'd remind us, if we have ASF in this country, I probably would be surprised if it did not start in the wild boar population. And we would also like those countries to continue to take product from us. So although it may be tougher for us if Germany were to start to export to some of those places, it might set a good precedent for us if we ever were to see ASF break here.
And that's something that I know we've talked about both on and off the air about our wild boar population here in the US and being able to control it to also help mitigate some of that risk with the African swine fever outbreaks as well.
Absolutely. I think so. It's interesting. And again, we might in the short run not view that as positive for us in the US, but we're going to want to think about how we want others to respond to us if we were to happily break with ASF.
Hopefully, that is not something that we have a conversation about anytime ever. And thankful that we continue to have such strong biosecurity practices and the safeguards that are in place through all levels of biosecurity and security here in the U.S.
Yeah, so I think you look at what's been happening in Germany, and it's all positive in that we've seen it stay out of that domestic industry. I hope. I think that maybe gives me some hope that it would be similar here, just given the biosecurity measures that we have in place in the U.S.
Scott, I think that'll do it for us this week. As we look ahead to next week, a much busier report week for us.
That's right. We'll get cold storage and livestock slaughter out on Thursday, and we finish next week with another round of cattle on feed.
Excellent. We will talk to you then. Have a great weekend. Enjoy your fall weather.
You do the same, Megan.
Hopefully everybody continues to have a safe harvest for those in the field as well. So our weekly livestock market update delivered to your email box every Saturday morning. Visit our website, brownfieldagnews.com. You can submit questions and you can subscribe as well. And for all of the really fantastic Brownfield podcasts, check out those at brownfieldagnews.com/podcast. Have a great weekend. I'm Megan Grebner for Brownfield.